The levels are set. The mics are ready.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
So strap yourself in. It's time to go one-on-one with Bill Alexander.
Let's go.
Hi, and welcome to this edition of One-on-One with Bill Alexander. Something new, something different. You actually get to see me now. Not only you get to see me, which we've done that in the past, you actually get to see my guest in his home in North Carolina. John Daly, how are you doing today?
Bill, doing great. Thank you so much. You said something new. I know it's something new recording, but something old is you got me on here.
Well, okay, you said it, I didn't. But what's really interesting about this is where our technology is going, because we were talking off the program about when you and I both started in the industry, we never thought something like this would be able to happen, let alone doing it in our own homes.
It's phenomenal. I mean, I do a lot of Zoom interviews. I've got a new podcast. It's a sports and entertainment podcast that I'm doing with Eric Snyder, aka Fish. It's called Daily Fish, and we're amazed at not only the people, the big names we get on, like Bryan Cranston, Johnny Bench, Ken Singleton, John O'Hurley, but they come on the air and they're on with us and they're mixing drinks with us. I mean, they're doing things that are normally they wouldn't do. So you do get a chance to get a like a bird's eye view of people that you normally wouldn't get. And so I think it's great. And the COVID has only exacerbated this. It's made it even more popular. And when you listen to the trends that are happening, television as we know it, and cable TV as we know it is on its way out. Streaming is continuing. Streaming is not going anywhere. So this is actually the future. And if you look at Spotify, I mean, if you have your show on Spotify, not only are you getting paid, but you're getting a lot of people who are following you. So it's the new realm. And I think, as we talk, and I know you and I talk about social media being, there are the bad side of social media where people can just say whatever they want to say, and they can put out disinformation. What I love about this is it kind of allows you to have more conversations with people and allows you to to see them. That's what I was saying to you before. It's like, getting the expression on people's faces, getting their body language. It's a lot more interesting. You're giving a lot more information than just hearing them talk. So yeah, I think it's the way of the future. I don't think it's going anywhere. That's for sure.
And the thing I think, coming from a radio background, is that whenever you talk to somebody that was usually over a telephone, you just heard this disjointed voice. You never were able to picture the person with the person that you were talking with. And now this gives us the opportunity that not only can I hear what you say, I can also see the facial expression. I can also get the one-on-one connection. And even the audience, when they see it, they get the one-on-one connection because they see you not looking directly at me, but looking directly at you whenever they watch the video, which again, I think is something a little bit unusual for some of us old guys, to have someone sitting there and just staring at us and talking to us.
It is different, that's for sure. But it's if you're used to television, I think a lot of people are getting used to it. I mean, we're seeing there's one of the most popular podcasts, and I can't remember the name of it. It's 2 or 3 of the stars from The Sopranos, and that's all they're doing is just they're talking about The Sopranos each time, and they're making a ton of money. And somebody else was telling me there's a couple of stars. Jason Bateman from Ozarks. They said he's not doing Ozarks because he's making more money doing this podcast. And so, I mean, when you're beginning to see that tells you something. So there are people who are really situated for it that can do it. And someone like you who's done radio before. I mean, really, it's not like you're sitting there staring and glamping into the camera. You're talking. You're doing your thing.
Right.
And they're just getting another bird's eye view of you. And, it's like all those years they've been hearing you talk. They're going, okay, now I get to see what Bill really looks like.
Well, the thing is that when I started doing this program again a couple years back, we actually worked it out with a local cable company that the local cable station would actually give us the opportunity to air the program weekly. So I could only do video on one side, which was, of course, me. And there was always a photograph of the voice of the other person I was talking to on the phone. Now I'm thinking about renegotiating the deal with the cable company and say, here, look, I got both of us on screen now. This may be something interesting to watch. But again, it's interesting to see the progression happen over a period of time. But I understand you're now teaching college on a community college level.
Yeah, I'm in Brunswick County, which is right in between Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and Wilmington, North Carolina. And Brunswick County, North Carolina is a booming county. And they have a community college here that was just over the last 2 years, 2 years in a row, was named the #1 community college in America.
Wow.
And so after they won it the first year, they asked me to come and teach this course. And I said, well, you're going to lose your rating. Well, they won it again in spite of me being there teaching with them. And they're a great college, just a great, great college. And I can, again, we've talked about trends before. I can see a lot of these major universities that are teaching liberal arts and stuff like it's going to start going to these community colleges that are teaching, HVAC, they're teaching emergency services, that are, the things that are going to be more important to daily living and to jobs locally. So what they asked me to do was their small business center wanted me to do a course on how to shoot your business videos off the iPhone, since I wrote a book on it. And so I did 3 1 hour and 30-minute sessions. I had to do it virtually. And primarily it was just, how do you do it and how you can do it so the videos look professional, how you can do it so that you don't get injured or hurt, so you can, be careful. And then at the same time too, if you don't want to do the editing, how to shoot it in a way so you can get it to an editor. And then also kind of teaching people how to interview, how to do it the right way, how to structure things, So it was actually a lot of fun for me. The only thing I didn't like, and this is something I got to ask you about, was that not a lot before, but anytime I have taught anywhere, I've been in front of a class. I've been in front of them. And so you get it was so weird for me because, I'm interjecting my funny, goofy humor and, there's no response because it's virtually. So you can't see them or anything like that. How do you do that? Is there something different you do teaching virtually?
It actually, the interesting thing about it is I'm still not comfortable doing it because when I teach virtually, not only do I have kids that are out of the classroom, I also have kids in front of me. So I have a hybrid type model between the two. So I can still do those funny quips or those stories, and the kids I still get reaction out of. And occasionally the kids that are watching online, I'll get a comment or two interjecting. The only problem is I don't respond to the kids online quick enough when they interject because everything is a free flow of thought. And they may be commenting, but I don't know they're commenting until after the fact. So that's something that I have to work on. But I've been doing virtual learning now for, since the spring of 2020, which was totally new to me back then.
It's tough. It's tough. Yeah. I give you credit for it. And the other thing is because you got delays. Even when I'm watching really good interviews on television, when they're interviewing somebody remotely, I mean, it's confusion. It's people talking over. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. No, go ahead. No, you go ahead. No, so you lose. So I'm going to say it's uncomfortable. It is, and it isn't. I think most people are kind of, okay, I get it, and they've kind of accepted it. Whereas maybe before, or at first, probably when, you were starting teaching in March of 2020, or when people started doing interviews like that remotely, I think people were getting a little frustrated, but I think they're used to it now.
You make the comment about people stepping over top of each other. To really learn how to do the skill is do an interview over the telephone for the first time, because you can't see their reaction. You don't know when they're going to talk. And there are times you're going, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead. And you correct it. But over a period of time, you can pretty much estimate or guess when the person is going to come on, and you know when to shut up or so on and so forth. So yeah, it is difficult, and it's a skill that not many people know anymore, because we have been using um, video, text messaging, and everything else. Talking to people is a skill that we've lost in some cases.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think this is bringing it back. So we're having more interaction, even though a lot of people are, they've got their heads stuck in their phone. If they got their heads stuck in their phone watching somebody being interviewed, that's kind of a different story. So, yeah, I think you're beginning to see, be curious if we talk in about 4 or 5 years to see where this is going and what effect it does have on people. Because we're going through, we talked about this before. We're just going through a ton of changes.
Well, I think it's interesting when you said that, because when I talked to you the first time about a year and a half ago, just the changes we've gone through that period of time, and we talked about the website that you were working with called news.tv, making
Mhm.
or giving the people the opportunity to be their own citizen journalists and going out and having their own page and being able to do that. That right there, I think, is giving people credibility, and telling a story that they want to tell without going through the major news outlets.
Yeah, and you can go around a lot of different things and get to a lot of people, um, which in some respects is good. In other respects, it's bad. If you're somebody that hasn't had training, or you don't have a on-off switch that will, um, instead of telling people your feelings, telling them exactly what's going on, a little scary. But it's a double-edged sword. It's like everything else. I mean, some of it's really good, and some of it's like, wow, you don't need that person on there at all. That's
I was on news TV yesterday, which I will say was the first time in a while, and again, I probably should have been on it sooner. But have you seen it turn into what you and the original, the creator wanted it to turn into, or is it still under the radar?
I think it's overall it's really under the radar. I think
Okay,
um, in the area where I am, I'm noticing a lot of people come up to me and go, "Hey, you're the news guy,"
okay,
and so, and again, we're still in startup mode. He's working on some funding. Um, it's become more of a kind of a chamber of commerce type thing, helping local businesses.
okay,
Have I done news stories? Yeah, like I did a tornado that hit here and killed 3 people. I just did a bomb threat at a local school. I went live on
okay.
there doing that. So it's still a little in flux. We're waiting for sponsors and businesses to kind of jump on board. Um, it's a ton of fun. I mean, I still enjoy going out there. It gives me a chance to be the news reporter I used to be without
Right.
having somebody telling what to do. And um, so it's yeah. I mean, and folks are interested. The best way to go is go to if you go to News NOOZ and go look at the Facebook pages that News has. They're actually reconstructing their site, the news.tv, NOOZ.tv. That's being reconstructed. But they're the guy Will Head who started it. He thinks he's close. He thinks there's a lot of people are interested, and I do believe there's a need for it. Um, especially we're kind of in a rural area. We're in between two cities, Myrtle Beach and Wilmington. They're not exactly huge cities by any
Right.
means, but they are cities. They're urban areas, and they could both cover Brunswick County. And the only time they come down here is when there's a hurricane or there's been a murder, which we never have
Right.
down here,
Right.
and that's rare. And so the area here doesn't really have. We've got a weekly newspaper called the Brunswick Beacon, which is a very good weekly newspaper, but there's no radio station. There's no daily newspaper here, and so news could fill that void in a great way. And in some respects, we do. I mean, I do cover some issues like, the price of water is going up in certain towns because of things that are going on environmentally as well as business wise. Um, the traffic here is starting to get kind of bad. At the same time, too, it's really expanding. I mean, they're getting like 2,000 new homes going into the area. Just covered a story of this incredible golf course called Farmstead. And it's iconic worldwide around because their 18th hole is a par six. And just found out this beautiful course with this iconic par six 18th hole that everybody talks about. The course is closing at the end of October because a developer came in and he's going to build $1 million houses there because this place is really beginning to boom. So the golfers are like, oh, they're distraught over the whole thing. But at the same time, too, you're beginning to see progress with people wanting to come down to the beach area. They want to come down to an area in the South. So, there's some fascinating stories that are happening here that, I think news could actually tackle. And, I have, but I need more time and, we need money to make it happen. But I think in a lot of areas now, is this going to work in a big city? I don't think so. It will work more as a chamber of commerce type thing that you can get stuff out on social media. But in rural areas or in small areas that just don't have a newspaper covering them, I mean, this is, to me, it makes a ton of sense.
Because where I'm at is in an area very similar to that. We have Pittsburgh to our north and Morgantown to our south.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have a TV station. We do have one local radio station, but that local radio station is pretty much bartered programming, and nothing is original or created. It's via satellite. And then we have a newspaper that I think they still have one or two reporters, but they're publishing nothing but news releases that the local businesses or organizations give them because they don't have the resources to do what they did 15, 20, 25 years ago, which I'm sad to see these types of things happening, but we're going to see it happening more than we see them to come back.
I agree with you. And I had somebody call me about a job offer to do radio in 2 or 3 rural markets. I have to get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning and do the news hits for these stations. And I'm going like, I don't even live there. And I go, well, Nat, we don't care. You stay at home if you are, but you've got to kind of figure out what's going on. And then you got to kind of do the local news hit for them. And I'm like, you can't find somebody to do it. And so I would be doing it for 3 or 4 stations in 3 or 4 different markets. And so they're going to save money because they don't have to house me. They can just pay me a fee, and they're probably not going to pay my health insurance or anything like that. And the thing is that these radio stations, and it's the same thing with local TV stations. They cannot compete with Facebook and Twitter and the social media ads, because those ads not only are more effective and reach more people because people are going to be looking right at it, they target people. They target the people you want to have target. You boost them, you're going to reach a lot of people. If you're, hey, I'm on my phone. Let me find a good restaurant nearby. Well, whatever restaurant nearby is going to pop up on your phone. Oh, yeah, that looks really good. Let's go there.
Right.
When you watch a TV ad on television, you don't watch TV ad on television. Why? Because you're either flipping the channel or you're going to get something to eat.
Yes.
So they're not effective. And, I talk to a lot of people about one of the reasons they think cable is going to die is because the cable fees are going up because they've got to pay cable fees to the stations to carry their signal. Mm-hmm. And they're beginning to say it's way too expensive. And those cable fees for a lot of TV stations, half the revenue for that TV station for the year comes from those cable fees. And the cable companies are saying, I'm not going to do that. So you're going to start seeing streaming. Either the cable companies are going to stop providing programming, except maybe some local programming, and they're just going to do streaming, or they're just going to do internet service. And so that's the next change that's coming. So TV news stations, I think, are going to be out of business unless you're in a major, in one of the bigger major markets. Like I don't think New York City, LA, Chicago, I don't think the major state, Houston, I don't think they're going to lose their TV station, but they're probably going to be different. They're probably going to be more streaming, and they're probably going to be more, instead of at 5 o'clock, we're at 5 o'clock news. It's going to be, no, it's going to be news whenever it's breaking and what's ever there.
Right. And I'm one of those people that cut the cable. I cut it right before the whole pandemic started. So it's been about a year and a half now. And what's interesting about it is I haven't missed it because I can still watch my local stations. I have an antenna on the side of the house. I can see my locals. I can see some of the nostalgia TV programming out there. And that's all I need. We thought we were going to miss all this stuff, and we didn't because, like you said, you have streaming services to pick up. And since I cut the cable, I increased my streaming service up to a higher bandwidth. So now I can stream more and actually produce more content than I was doing before, which is really nice. But what I think is really interesting to you about these news stations coming to you to do it, I want to know where you find them at, because everybody that asks me to do stuff, they're asking me to do it for free. I just,
Oh,
I have done, I've done I've done a radio program for a national station that I just left over within the last month, and I was doing it for them, and I love doing it, but I wasn't getting paid to do it. I was just getting name recognition, and then a local station around here that's based about 100 miles north of me, they contacted me and said, would you be willing to do it? And I said, I can do one night a week, not a problem, and I'm doing it there. But again, the only way I'm going to get paid for it is if I sell my own advertising for it or sponsorships for the program.
yeah. Well, and that's true, especially having your own show. No, they wanted me literally to come in and do like 5 minute newscast in between, music or whatever. They didn't even have, I don't even think they had talk or anything. I don't know. To me, well, is if you've got a local talk show, you can have that guy do the news.
That host,
just have somebody write the news.
What's interesting about it, and I did not know this because I was just doing talk radio from my home studio that was being rebroadcast on 6 radio stations throughout the United States. And they took the program as a package deal, and they would air it when they could. There was 2 stations running it live, which was more trouble than it was worth. But I found out that there's stations out there that are voice tracking, which in other words, the music is on their servers. You come in, you talk about what you want to talk about, drop it in, and a computer does it, and it literally sounds like you're in their studio. I'm going, I wish I would have known about this 30 years ago. I would have invested one heck of a piece of change in a home studio, and I would have never left.
Yeah, it's true. And a lot of people are doing that. And, it's just like the old syndication. I mean, you're one person who's on a lot of different stations. Yeah. And they don't have to pay the local person, and pay their insurance and pay their other stuff. So, yeah, that's where technology is coming in and reducing a lot of jobs.
It's a good thing and it's a bad thing. And I know that that's the way Sirius satellite radio is doing it now, is their hosts are all over the United States in their own home studios, and they don't have to pay for a major building. All they have to do is pay for a server site that updates to a satellite feed, and that's it. I mean, they've literally got it to a cost-effective point right now that the subscriptions costs have dropped almost in half compared to what they were 20 years ago, which is amazing that satellite radio has been around for 20 years. But so we're talking about the books that you've written and all that. Now, the big thing that I wanted you on the program for was this coming Saturday is the 20th anniversary of 9/11, which for most of us who went through it, it's a day that we'll never forget. Excuse me. It's a day we'll never forget. However, there are adults out there right now that weren't around or were too young to understand what happened on that day. For example, I have a 21-year-old son who was just a few months old when the event happened. How do you explain it to someone of that age or someone that was a toddler and they're now in their mid-20s, early or mid to late 20s, explain to them what the significance of this day was, because they don't know what life was before on 9/10/2001. They only know what life is after 9/11/2001.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I would tell them to go read a book called The Looming Tower by Lawrence Wright, which was in, I believe it was in 2005, 2006. It is a great look back, especially a historical look back of what happened. To me, it's the quintessential book on 9/11. Um, and it also showed how the 1993 attack on the Twin Towers, that didn't take it down by any means, but it was a wake up call, and we didn't pay attention to it.
No.
It also shows, for instance, getting on a plane. The difference of getting on a plane before 9/11, after 9/11, and it still continues today with the way we have to get on it. At the same time, too, it's are things, do we still, I know we still think of 9/11, and we think the horror that we went through, yet at the same time, too, 20 years removed, I think we think, well, I think we're safer. Are we?
Okay.
In some respects we are. In some respects we have, a lot of people think that, we're more, it's more dangerous now with domestic terror after we had the January 6th incident at the Capitol. So it's I think it's still fascinating to look back and to kind of realize, Osama bin Laden was, he was actually he was kind of a nutcase, if you think about it, kind of a knucklehead. One of the great things that Lawrence Wright's book kind of points out was that, he's supposed to be this big hero, and what he uncovered was, whenever there was these guys, Al Qaeda was going into battle, on that day he got sick. He never went into battle. He was just I can't go in. I gotta lean back. He used to always tell people he was 6'4". He wasn't 6'4". He was 6 feet. He goes into hiding, and eventually we take him down. But I think I think for us, what 9/11 did was it kind of woke us up to a lot of things that I think, once we're in the COVID, and as badly as I think we've handled COVID, we've also handled it really well. I mean, the fact that we turned the technology around, to get the virus, to get the vaccinations out there. So I think it kind of ushered in the end of the 1990s into this totally new world. And your son, I'm thinking of anybody that was born in the 1990s. I feel sorry for a lot of these kids, because they've had to go through 9/11. They then had to go through the financial crisis of 2008, the pandemic, the insurrection of January 6th. A lot of them, and I have sympathy for a lot of these young kids, and I know a lot of people, oh, they're woke and they're just, they're.
Yeah.
I think we put a lot of stuff on them that's really difficult. I think we got to be a little bit more understanding. Do we need to say buck up? Yeah, absolutely. We need to say that. But at the same time, too, I mean, I never went through that. I mean, I remember the financial crisis of 1987. I was working at the time. I can remember 68 when, we had all those assassinations.
Right.
But, there was, we were pretty protected growing up there. So I think these young people, the ones who are in their, who are in their mid to late 20s to early 30s, I mean, they've got to look, and I know they're looking at, their parents, people like you and me, and they're saying, boy, you guys had it good. We don't have it that good. I don't know if we're going to have a lifestyle like you have, and what we had to go through as young people, you guys didn't. So I understand that, and I understand that there's a difference in the millennials, the Gen Xers, compared to we here in the baby boom generation.
What I think is interesting about it is, I don't think when I was younger in my 20s and even in my even in my early 30s before 9/11 happened, did I really think about the differences between the generations? Because I knew who the boomers were. The only reason the boomers were the boomers is because of after World War II, and I don't think there was any specific difference between that generation because I was born 2 years later after the final boomer was born, and I'm in the next one. And then all of a sudden we've named all these generations to identify these different people, and it's like, why do we feel the need to separate us even more by giving each other a name so we can call them something other than who they are? Because I think a lot of the time that creates animosity when you start talking about the Xers and the millennials and the Gen Zers and all that. Because I mean, you go back to the idea of everybody get off my lawn, and you're talking about the boomers and those people. I don't understand why we need to segment the group of population that we have right now, no matter how old or young they are.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the, academic elitists that are getting into, sociology, psychology,
Okay.
in some respects. And again, double-edged sword here. I'm not knocking them for that, because we do want to try to understand where they're coming from. The problem is, in trying to understand where they're coming from, now we're knocking them, and
Right.
it's um, uh, the fact that not only technology's changed, but there's so many things that have gone on that are affecting them. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, in the 1990s was the height of, I mean, look at the economic prosperity that we had. And the reason was because there were so many baby boomers there who were at the height of theirs. Then you got to the 9/11, and 2001 to 2010, and you had the financial crisis, and it's like it was different. And again, I've always said that there's two things. There's one, there's demographics, and two, there's technology, and those are the two main factors that override everything. And
Okay.
the early 2000s was when the baby boomers were kind of getting out of being the economic engine. And
Right.
now you get into the teens up to the 2020. The baby boomers are now, we're retiring. I mean, most
Yeah.
of us are, or more than half of us are, relying on, four of us are relying on one Gen Xer or millennial to support us in our retirement. Whereas, when I was in my 30s or 40s, there was four of us taking care of one retiree ahead of us, and it's totally different from that. But if I go back to the 1990s, wow, totally different. Go back to even 2000 to 2010, totally different.
Right.
2010 to 2020, totally different. And now it's so when you think about the effects that they have on especially kids growing up. And the other thing is it's a lot of it has to do with the media. Is that, when you and I were growing up, I mean, we had ABC, NBC, CBS. I mean, we didn't
Right.
have phones or all this stuff coming at us. And kids today can stay up all night, looking at one of these and coming up with different stuff, or they're with their friends. We never had that. I mean, you and I never even had a phone or anything like that. So,
And the first phone
you
I
might
got,
have
I had to
books.
buy myself. So that's even another story for another time. But
Well, yeah,
we
well,
give
yeah,
these
and same
kids.
with me. So what I'm saying is that everything has sped up because of technology, certainly over the last 15, 20 years. And so as a result of it, these kids are having different effects of what's going on. So I understand why we're studying them and why we're breaking them down. It's, I think, in an effort to help them more than anything else. But at the same time, too, I agree with you. I think if it's like, what are you? Are you a millennial? Oh, you're a millennial. Okay,
Yeah.
I know what type you are. You're going to call me a Karen. I mean, that's you're right. It can create more
Yeah.
animosity, and a lot of people have called me Karen many times. So just so you know that.
So when you look back at 9/11, and if we could take the technology that we have now and take it back to September 10th, 2001, do you think 9/11 would have been covered much different than it was? Because if you remember, when we go back then, yes, there was a cable news cycle, but not the way it is now. You still had Peter Jennings, you still had Dan Rather, you still had Tom Brokaw. Three of some of the most trusted individual in news that you would just watch them and hang on every word. But if we would take what we have today back then, do you think things would have been covered differently?
I think they would have been covered more, and you would have gotten more insight into more things. You probably would have gotten a lot
Okay.
more disinformation as well. But yeah, you would have had, you would have people like you and me who can pick up our phone and do a live shot off of a
Right.
phone, into a Facebook page. So yeah, I think it would have been. I think it probably would cause a little bit more chaos because you just don't know who to trust, who to believe.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, one of the reasons I wrote the book is how do you find, the trustworthy person to cover. But yeah, I think it would have. I mean, just look at the January 6th insurrection. I mean, look at all the video that's out there now that's actually helping the prosecutors. That also, helped us. I mean, um, when I was kind of watching, I mean, I was not only watching the two or three news outlets, but I was watching my screen, and I was actually watching social media and stuff like that. I think I told you the story about, and I know they're just starting the trial in Paris on the 2015 terror attacks there.
Yes.
And this was 2015, and I always tell the story of um, I was out playing golf when it first started breaking. My phone went off. So my wife and I were just finishing up, got home, and so she goes, "I'll make dinner." She goes, "I know you want to kind of watch this." So put the computer on, had the phone there, watching on TV. So I started going on social media, and then I started reposting things. So I was getting stuff from France 24, from um, the different the BBC, and what's the Fox, the Murdoch one over there, and I know I'm drawing a blank on it, but Sky News, Sky News.
Sky,
So I was
yeah,
getting
okay.
all that, and and actually reputable news sources, and then I was getting stuff from the State Department, and I'm about 3 or 4 years removed from being a news anchor at the time, but I'm still doing this, and I'm doing it based on what I saw some stuff come across. I'm not going to repost that. Okay, I saw that. Okay, that makes sense. So I reposted a couple things like, okay, if you have somebody over there, the State Department says call this number. So I reposted it. So I kind of followed it for, oh God, for probably about 4, 5, 6 hours till it ended. And then I got two or three, I don't know if it were text, I don't know if it was emails, I don't know if it was Twitter messages or whatever, but I had a couple people say, "Thank you very much. I followed you the whole time because I've got a child who's in
Okay.
school, who's in college over in Paris. And thank you. I actually stayed with you and watched it." And I thought to myself, out of all my years of being a journalist, the 3 or 4 years removed, what I did on social media, to me, I felt I did more as a journalist in that one night than I had in a lot of my career as
Right.
far as trying to help people. So I think that, um, in the right hands, I think we could help a lot of people. I mean, I'm trying to remember. I think it was there was a huge attack in fact, I'm trying to remember where I wrote about this, but it was the huge attack in Bombay, in Mumbai, where
Mm-hmm.
they killed all these different people. And it was really at the start where Twitter had just come on board, and these people who had Twitter were actually tweeting to the cops to tell them where they were, and the cops are telling them stay there or move out of there. And this was the first thing. I mean, Twitter had only been around maybe, a couple of months at the time, and it was just hitting it big, and it actually helped save a lot of people. So I think the more we're getting out there, the more it's actually going to help people more than anything else. It's still going to be used for disinformation, and it's still, it's a double-edged sword.
I think, and the more that I keep looking at things that I see online, especially with the whole COVID and the mask and the insurrection on the 6th, anybody can go online and create content, and people will believe it.
Yeah.
Going back to what you said before about having trusted sources, is there a way that we can actually maybe train, school individuals in some way, shape, or form before we let them go out and start publishing this stuff? Do you think it's the responsibility of the platforms to do that instead of them trying to clean up every fire that happens afterwards?
I think so. Let me use an analogy it's a little strange, but anybody can walk out on a golf course in America. But I think over in the UK, you have to have a registered handicap to show that you've either taken golf lessons or
Okay.
you've played in a certain way. So if you want to play St. Andrews, if your handicap is over 25, which means you're not that good of a golfer, you can't play, and you got to show your card. A little bit of a goofy analogy, but yeah, I do think so. Um, I guess could you be on social media on Facebook and see things but not post? I guess, but yeah, I would do it that way. I would say, yeah, you've got to show that you're competent and you know what's going on. But here, I would take it a step further. I would make every person who's running for Congress has to go and take a test.
I agree.
I'm flabbergasted at, Tommy Tuberville is, a former football coach at Auburn. He's now a senator. He doesn't know the three branches of government. I mean, how does somebody like that get in there? It's like,
well, we had a
the woman who
president
cuts
that
my
didn't know the
hair
three
has to
branches
get
of
licensed.
government.
Yeah, absolutely. But the woman who cuts my hair has to be licensed.
Yes.
She had to go through more training than
You're right.
the person who's a senator who's passing laws. So I think there does need to be more stuff like that. And I do think because these social media platforms, and I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to make as much money as possible. On the other hand, if you're causing, danger, and again, at the same time too, I'm gonna say this: Facebook is it's brilliant as far as getting the word out for businesses. They reach a lot of people. I've been posting videos, for some companies, and they're getting 20,000 hits at restaurants who say to me, "Stop putting it up there. I'm out of food." That's how good it is. On the other hand, it's, you got the other stuff. Again, double-edged sword. You got the goofy stuff. I think, yeah, if you're going to be somebody who's a content provider, you have to prove to yourself, and you have to take a test, or you have to do something. I would say yes. Now, are they going to do that? No, that's more expense for them. They probably don't want to do that. But I think it's also up to the individual who's taking in the stuff and that's why I wrote the book, the No BS Guide to Navigating a Media Biased World, so that you can kind of, that's, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to follow that. Or, you know what, that's a bunch of malarkey. And 9 times out of 10, you can read stuff, at least I can, and I can go, yeah, right, come on,
But the population I'm worried about is the population that can't distinguish between true fact and someone manipulating a fact to make themselves look good. This whole thing about the sheep dewormer being used for COVID prevention, and we have a national podcast or talk show host who admits on air that he's taking it, and then all of a sudden there is a rush at all these farm and garden stores to go buy this stuff because, well, so-and-so said he's taking it, that means I can take it too. We used to make our journalists, especially the anchors, responsible for what they did. We don't hold anybody behind a microphone now responsible. And that's what frustrates me, because any Tom, Dick, and Harry, if they say the right thing and they say it loud enough and they say it long enough, people are going to believe it, and people are going to be following him back and forth. We have a woman in Pittsburgh right now who used to be a TV news anchor, and I won't mention her name. She was a good TV news anchor until she got herself in trouble. She made a racial slur. She never apologized for it. She just kept perpetuating it. She got fired. She went on local talk radio. Well, now she becomes the newest supporter of Trump, and how Trump is this, and the governor here is bad, and everything else. And she's become anti everything except Trump. And now she's telling people not to get the vaccine, even though we know her husband got it because he's a major surgeon in Pittsburgh. And it's just, people are following this woman like it is gospel truth. And it's like, people, wake up. I know people that I feel they're very intelligent, that I respect, that believe every word she's saying. And no matter what I say, they go, you don't know what you're talking about, even though I have the same background, the same degree, even more, but yet I don't know what I'm talking about because they know me personally.
One, it's dangerous. And two, it's almost impossible. I mean, you can't, these people are in their own world. I keep telling everybody, and you and I have talked about before, my whole thing about the sports and entertainment bias in media.
Yes.
What has transpired in that is, and I keep going back to story structure of movies and TV shows. You have the protagonist, the hero, and the antagonist, and they fight, and there's a battle. Somebody wins, somebody loses, and normally in good television or good film, there's a lesson to be learned, no matter who wins or who loses. What's happened is that's exacerbated to the point where everybody now is in this hero syndrome. We're the hero of our own lives. And you're beginning to see, and I kind of teach this in different marketing courses, is that, you, Mr. Business Person, you're not the hero. Your customer is the hero. Right. And if you make your customer the hero, they're going to come to you because you're going to help them. It used to be so many businesses where, hey, I'm the one that can help you. I'm great. I'm wonderful. It doesn't do that anymore. The individual right now is the hero of their own story. I talk about, I don't know if you remember this, but the guy who shot up the pizza place in Washington, D.C. because he thought Hillary and Bill Clinton were doing these satanistic things to kids down below. All you had to do was listen to the phone message that he sent to his daughter. This guy's from North Carolina. He drove all the way up. He sent a phone message to his daughter. And if you listen to the phone message and don't understand the context of it, this guy's a hero. He's going to save kids. He's going to do something. He's doing something that is going to help people. And he is into this story to the point. I mean, you think he's like, John Wallace, he's the Scotsman that's going to save from the UK. And you listen, you just listen to him, and he's just so ensconced in this. And the majority of people are like that. I mean, we saw that in January 6th. We see people who are like what you're saying. They're just not going to believe anything scientific because we've been in this world of, and I keep going back to these business gurus who teach people, oh, you're down and we'll teach you how. And what do they teach them? They teach them how to bend reality. Right. Bend reality. Yes, you can sell that. Yes, you are a hero. You can do this. Yes, you barely got out of school, but you can be a millionaire. You've got to bend reality. You bend reality. And sometimes in business it works, because if in business, if you get 1% of the market, so you've lost 99% of the market, but you get 1%, you're a millionaire. I mean, 1% of the market in business is really good. But to take it into politics or take it into public health, changing 1% ain't going to do anything. You need to get up there and change 50%. So to me, this whole thing of bending reality, this hero syndrome that we all have, we've forgotten about the common good. And that's what's really hurting America today. And people tell me, how do you get them to change? You're not going to get them to change. We've indoctrinated them into their hero syndrome, and they think you're the idiot trying to help.
Uh,
And
thank you. Yes.
and it's not. I've got so many friends. I can't name them because they're very popular people. They've lost a lot of good friends for 30 years
Yeah.
over the whole Trump thing, and
Oh,
they don't talk
trust me,
anymore.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I think is interesting is, and you go back that a congressman, representative need to take a test. I think the average adult, and I'm going to get hell for this, needs to take a test before they can go vote to say that they understand the way the system works. Because the one thing I loved, and I still love, is that when people were being taken off Facebook, they were being taken off Twitter, they've been taken off whatever. It's freedom of speech. It's freedom of speech. I'm going, okay, your freedom of speech is to stand on your back porch and scream and yell as loud as you can until you start infringing on someone else's rights. If you don't own the media outlet that is being licensed by the FCC, it's not freedom of speech. They're afraid to lose their license. Of course they're going to take you off the air. Of course they're going to pull you off Facebook. It is a business. It's not there for everybody to say how wonderful everything is. Like these alternative sites like Parler that right now that everybody is jumping on, or Webkin, which is a new podcasting site, I guess. That's not what freedom of speech is. These people are just making money off you guys now because they know that they can, because you're going to be so far to one side that you're going to do whatever it takes to get that small percentage of the audience, and you'll pay whatever it costs. They're seeing you coming, and these people don't understand it.
And that's, it kind of goes back to when we had the fairness doctrine taken away
Oh, I missed that.
I guess it was the late 1980s or so. And
Yeah.
that led to, actually Fox News. Even though I think there's some good things about Fox News, I think overall, I think they're kind of harmful to a lot of different people. And it's just, and then, news became entertainment. And at the same time too, I don't think we understand, people just don't understand what good reporters would go through. I mean, I keep telling people in my years as an investigative reporter, the best stories I had were stories I couldn't put on the air because I couldn't get them confirmed. I couldn't get the right sources. Now these people just shout anything and just get it up there.
And that's what frustrates me. Even when I did radio news on a local level, we couldn't go to air with anything unless we had 3 confirmations on that story. We had to call the police, we had to call the hospital, and then we had to call whoever originally gave us the information so we could verify it. We couldn't just put something on the air because it was on Facebook like these other people are doing. However, news stations are doing that now, that are taking Facebook stories and they're repackaging them as their own. And we're losing a lot of news anchors in the Pittsburgh market, not because of the job getting harder reporting. It's because of all the requirements that are on them right now to do social media, to tell the story before they go to the air. And I'm going, then why are they even going to the air? Why don't you just let them do it on social media and be done with it? We'll have a news social media site. That's it. I mean, I just don't understand where we're going with this. I remember going through 4 years of school, going through doing internships after internships after internships to be able to learn to do this and be respected and be trusted. And now any Tom, Dick, and Harry can get their own program if they had 2 minutes of fame walking down the street. And I can guarantee you, in 5 years, someone that was arrested at the insurrection on the 6th is going to have their own national TV or radio show.
Easily.
We did it. We did it to Oliver North. I mean, why not? Let's do it to.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Again, that's been one of my pet peeves for years: is how anybody can do this, and yet the people that should be doing it don't have the opportunity.
Well, what's interesting is I had somebody who he had written a book, and the local TV station said, "Hey, we want to come over and do a story on you." And he goes, "Okay." And so he's calling me and telling me the story. And the local reporter came over, and it's just a reporter, and he's got the camera, he's got the tripod, he sets the whole thing up. And again, the guy saying, he says, "Oh, okay, what? Usually they come with a photographer, and then the reporter asks them questions." And so he sets the whole camera up, puts a mic on him, and so he says to him, "Okay, before I turn it on," he goes, "What do you want me to ask you?" And he was like, "What?" And so And so he asked me, he says, is this the way it is? And I go, yeah. I said, reporters are not reporters anymore. They're recorders. All
Yes.
they're doing is they're just recording stuff. We just did on my podcast, Daily Fish, we just did the 25th anniversary of the premiere of Real TV, my reality show that I did back, started in 1990. In fact, today is actually the 25th anniversary of the
Well,
premiere.
happy anniversary.
Thank you so much. And Michael Horowitz, who was one of my senior producers, he mentioned, and not bemoaning that Real TV helped cause this, but the fact that he says these TV news stations are doing or trying to do Real TV, and what they're doing is they're getting these videos and they're just showing, violence or a horrible crash or something, and it's just going through. And he said one of the things they didn't do, what we did on Real TV, was we told the story behind the person. Who is this person? What were they doing? How did this affect their lives? What came out of it?
You put it in context is what you did.
Yeah. And he says what they're doing now in the news, it's just this, gratuitous violence or gratuitous, accidents and stuff like that are happening. So it's, a lot of our technologies is doing that. And I think people are yearning for, to be honest with you, what you and I are doing right here, explaining, talking, putting our feelings out here on this. So I think in some respects, that's one reason why people are going to it. And it's why news anchors are either losing their jobs or they can't, because, you're right. I mean, and what I was explaining to this friend of mine who wrote the book was, this guy's got to go and get the interview with you. He's got to put the story together. He's got to edit it himself. Used to be, I had an editor, I had a photographer, and I could write it. And this guy has to do all 4 of those jobs. Then he's got to go write the story for the TV station's website and put it on there, like it's a newspaper story. So how do you expect these reporters? I mean, they can't do journalism. Again, they're just doing recording. They're not doing reporting.
Well, the one thing that frustrates me, and I've noticed this within the last year, because, and a lot of my guests are now reaching out to me to be on the program, which is fantastic. It makes life easier for me, instead of me going out and asking them to be on it. But I'm having people now saying, can you send me the questions in advance? I said, no. Why would I do that? Because if I send you for the questions in advance, you're going to be waiting for that question. And if I never get to it, you're not going to be happy with what I've done. And it's like, I've never, in all of my life of doing this, had a list of questions say, here, this is what we're going to talk about for an hour. And I was surprised that I guess this must be the new rule, that you have to get the questions before you go on, so you're not surprised or ambushed.
If it's a business, yes, they normally want to do that. Now, what I do is if somebody says to me, "Okay, I want to know what the questions are," I say, I'm not going to give you the question. I'll give you the topics. Here's what I want to cover. I want to cover this. I want to cover this. And you did that with me. I want to talk about 9/11. I want to talk about what's going on in the news. I do that way. Now, if somebody's bringing me on to host a podcast for them, I'll lay it out. Here's kind of the outline of it. But if it's going to be a news podcast, then, and you're a public figure or you're an elected official, no, I'm not giving you the questions. Now, the flip side of that is, okay, I'll give you the topics, or okay, I'll give you a couple of the questions. You don't know what my follow-up questions are going to be, because you're going to say something that I'm going to nail you on. So that's the difference.
Okay, maybe I need to look at it that way. That might be more entertaining. But again, to me, it's just, I was surprised by that, because, okay, I usually, no matter who the guest is, I will talk to them 5 or 10 minutes before we go on. Hey, this is what I want to talk about. Are you okay with that? And then the one thing I always ask them, is there anything you want me to cover in this? So in other words, let me open the door for you, and then you can walk through it and do whatever you need. But I've never had them ask me word for word what the questions were. And it just shocked me. It really did, because I didn't know how to react to that. And I told them no. And one of them actually refused to do the program because I would not give them a list of questions up front. I said, so be it. That's the way it's going to be. And that was actually an actress who refused to do the program. And it's not that she's a extremely well known. She was about 20 years ago, but she didn't feel comfortable. She thought I was going to do gotcha, and I'm going, I have no reason to do that. So Again, it's
That's
that whole
interesting.
idea of who you
Interesting.
trust and who you don't trust. And I always, 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 when I invite someone to be on the program, I always send them the link to the program and say, before you say yes or no, listen to what I'm doing. If you like it, come on. If not, I won't be offended. And I want to know how many people are actually doing that so they know who they are talking to instead of just going in and assuming that everybody's going to be nice and whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think you get a lot of that, and I think a lot of people are going on for publicity. I mean, I technically, I'm going on with publicity for you, but at the same time too, it's you could always nail me on, hey, John, I saw something you posted. Let me ask you about that. But
There's a few clothing optional pieces that you messaged me, but I couldn't figure that out. But anyhow,
well, yeah, I mean that's did you have to bring that up now? I mean,
no,
come on.
no, but again, but you're right. It is interesting, and I guess, and then that's the other thing that bothers me too is that when I bring someone on, and maybe it's because of the way I was trained to do this, is that I don't see it as true promotion. I just see it as true information. But again, everybody has an alternative or ulterior message or motive to promote something that they're doing. And I don't see it that way because I don't think that I'm going to be the guy that's doing the fanfare and everything else for you. I feel that I need to get your information out to the public and let the public decide who you are. And then if that's promotion, fantastic. If not, let the chips fall where they may. So again, it's all the way you look at the way the program's being produced or who's producing it. And again, you and I are doing this right now. Video makes it a little bit more difficult, but I can edit this for you to make you say whatever I want you to say, and no one would know.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and there's a lot of truth to that, and they can do a lot of different things, and you could even change my words if you wanted to in here to come around. Oh, can you believe what John Daly said to me? Yeah, so I mean that's within the realm of technology today, and for the most part, people are looking for they just want human touch more than anything else. That's why they'd be watching it. Am I trying to promote my different things? Yeah, if I get a chance to, but I'm much more interested in, getting to the topics that you're covering, because I know you cover great topics and you like a wide range of views. So I think most people who are going to be watching you aren't thinking, okay, Bill's going to nail this guy.
Well, but the other thing that Bill's worried about too is Bill's worried that people are thinking, well, he's just bringing them on so he can sell a book. That's the other thing, because I'm getting now, and for those authors that I have scheduled, I apologize for saying this, but I do have authors that have written one or two books that no one's ever heard of, and now they're reaching out to me saying, oh, I need to promote this book in your program. Can you do it? And I read the book going, have you listened to the program? This is not what we cover. But again, whoever their PR person is, it's like they don't get the connection. They just see a name, they see numbers, and they see that going, that's a perfect fit. They don't do their own research. I do mine.
I agree.
I know pretty much everybody. If I have anybody that comes on this program, it's my responsibility to know who they are before I have them on the air with me, and not to be surprised by something they say.
Yeah.
And that's the way I've always looked at it. I know who you are. I know enough of your background to know who you are. I follow you now online, and I know where you're going to come from in the conversation. So if I would ever think that you would try to throw something at me that would put me on the spot, I'd never have you on. Because I'm not only protecting me, I'm protecting you by doing that.
Well, I know you're in McKeesport, so I know that's actually, I got to hold that against you. So
I'm not in McKeesport. The station I worked on
the station
was
you were
in
at
McKeesport.
Was right. Yeah.
Right. I'm actually born and raised in Mars, Pennsylvania, north of the city of Pittsburgh. So I am a 1984 graduate of Mars Area High School. Our mascot was the Fighting Planets. Why we weren't the Martians, I have no idea. And I've been living in Brownsville, Pennsylvania now for almost 30 years. So that's where I'm located. But McKeesport's only 20 minutes away from where I'm at. So that was the station that I was on.
Well,
but I know
my wife was born in McKeesport. Yes. So, but I would have named your team Uranus.
Yeah, we may end that right there. So, have you been back to McKeesport in the recent past?
We've the last we were actually in Irwin, Pennsylvania, taking care of an aunt,
Okay.
and we were there right around the time of the election when it was the off. When I'm drawing a blank on his name, he's going to be running for Senate, but he's a congressman in your area there. So we were there in the winter in Irwin, Pennsylvania, and
Okay.
we were at the Capitol Grill, and I did some great segments on their chicken wings there. So,
Yes.
but I haven't had a chance to go back. We would go back because of family, but a lot of the family has died off there, so we haven't been back there in a while. Should I go back?
Well, the reason I ask is because McKeesport is one of those communities that had one heck of a history to it, and unfortunately, because of the mills, the mines, and everything that were there, it was an industrial town that basically shut itself down. Now they are reinventing themselves, which is a wonderful thing, but it does not look anything like it did when your wife grew up there, and that's why I was just wondering to see what her perception would be of going back now. Because if I go back to where I grew up, it is totally different. We were a small rural community. Now it's one of the fastest growing suburbs of the city of Pittsburgh, and one of the fastest growing suburbs in the United States where I grew up. And that's because of the major highways that met up basically right in that one spot. So I was just curious if she could do any compare and contrasting of when she was there last time.
No, she hasn't. But I guess my question would be, has COVID exacerbated that? People maybe kind of flying out of the city to the
Well,
suburbs?
the bad thing about the whole COVID thing is that we actually have a very good vaccine rate that has happened in the state. However, now all of a sudden we have anti-maskers coming in who are now basically pushing their will on everybody else, especially in the public schools. And
Yeah.
that's all that's taking over our news right now, is because there's a mandate from our governor saying you must wear masks in buildings holding K through 12 students in it. And what's happening is these, as my wife calls them, free breathers, feel the need to basically say, no, my kid's not going to wear a mask because it's detrimental to their health, da 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 da. And I keep looking at these people going, why is it okay to ignore my rights, but I have to accept yours? And we would have lost World War II if the U.S. citizens felt the way you do right now, because we would have never rationed. We would have never done any of this stuff because we're only in it for me.
Mhm.
And that's what we're dealing with right now. I never thought I would see that in Western Pennsylvania, but it has turned more red after the last president, because they thought he was going to be the saving grace, that he was going to save the mills, he was going to save the mines, he was going to say all this business. And guess what? Nothing happened. Only thing that happened is people became more angry and more upset. And they don't want to talk to their neighbor, and they don't understand why their neighbor's driving a new car, yet they're driving a car that's 15 years old. There is no community anymore, and that's what scares me, is that we're noticing that community is disappearing.
Yep. And we got to get a lot of these people back to work, and it's very difficult to find them jobs, especially, jobs that they've been used to, the factories and the mills, the unions, and that's the tough part.
But the bad thing about that tough part is my wife works for an economic development agency in the county I live in. We have more jobs now available for skilled and high skilled labor than we've had in the last 20 years, and they can't find people to do it. For goodness sake, Burger King here is doing $300 sign on bonuses for 14 and 15-year-olds to take a job because they cannot find people to work. And now their sign says, work today, we'll pay you tomorrow. Because they can't keep it, because there's so many jobs with so many vacancies that are paying so much better that these kids will get some little bit of work experience. They can go anywhere else. I still remember what my first job was. I remember what my first radio job paid. and it was nothing like what these kids are making. And I had a 4-year degree under my belt, and I was making minimum wage.
Yeah.
So it is a different time, and we are seeing some changes. Unfortunately, there is an older population that thinks a lot of these jobs are beneath them, and they
Mhm.
don't want to, because they don't want to do that, because the mines, the mills, and that are not coming back, at least not the way they were here before.
Nope.
When you talk to people that work in the mines, and I did not know this, you need at least a 2-year associate degree to go back into the coal mine because of the
Mm.
technology that they're using underground. And I'm going, I would have never
Absolutely.
known that. And how
Yep.
many people
Yep.
are going to be willing to go be trained for that? So again, we're seeing a lot of things happening. I don't know if it's for better or for worse, but they're happening.
Well, unfortunately, and it's a little bit Darwinism. I mean, you're going to see a lot of people that are kind of falling off,
Yeah.
dying, or being reliant on it, and it's going to come around. We're in the midst of some really big changes that were happening even before the pandemic, and the pandemic
Yes.
has only, exacerbated them. And we've probably got about another 6 to 8 years of fleshing these things out. It's kind of like, it was like the end of the 1920s when the Depression hit. Not that we're in a depression, I'm not saying that, but
Right.
the social and the economic and the demographic changes are all hitting at the same time. So they're just causing, it's confusion for the majority of people.
The last thing I'll ask you before I let you go, do you think that the situation was made worse because who the last president was? If you feel that anybody else would have been president, would have everything still stayed under the radar, or would it still bubble to the surface eventually?
Um, I've always said that Donald Trump was not a cause; he was a symptom.
Okay.
And it makes sense that he became president based on all the things we're talking about. The individual over the common good. People trying to be the hero of their own story. It's the changing in technology, the demographics. That ties into the racism and all that. So I I think he was destined to be president. I mean, the cards were just there for him to do it. I think we would be heading to something even without him. Um, in some respects, I think he just kind of goosed it along. I think it's the same thing with COVID. I think these things were going to happen. I think COVID just moved things along even quicker. And so we're going through there's a great book. It's called the Storm Before the Calm. It's written by George, and I'm drawing a blank on his name. But it's a fascinating book, and he wrote it about a year before COVID, but you looked at everything and you went, oh my God. And then the COVID just exposed it even more. So hopefully it's bringing it on faster. But at the same time too, we've got great technologies that are beginning to happen that are going to be saving lives. They're going to be making things easier for us. It's just that, as people we're behind, we're always behind. We don't get ahead of trends. And I think we got another 3 or 4 years of, instability here. And, and you look at the rest of the world is, turning very fascist, very totalitarian. And I know we've got that tendency too. And it's, we got a lot to deal with. I mean, we're no longer the one superpower, and that's changing so many things. It's going to change our, how we work, how we go to school, and how we raise our kids. So I think there's some instability for the next 4 years that will iron things out, that will eventually happen. But yeah, and we've got 30% of the country that just doesn't believe in science or research.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
It's sad. And the part of that I blame on the education system, but that's a story for another time.
Yeah.
Because
I
of
agree.
what we've done there. John, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to have you on the program. I'll have you back on again before the first of the year because I know there's going to be a lot of things changing between now and then. Good luck on the new podcast. Congratulations on today being your 25th anniversary of Real TV, and good luck with everything because it sounds to me like you have everything at least rolling in the right direction.
Certainly, things are moving. I'm hoping that I'm going to be as good as you someday. So,
you surpassed me years ago. Don't worry about that.
I don't know about that, my
John,
friend. Always a
thank you
pleasure being with you. Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it. Thank you very much. You have a great day. Bye-bye.
Talk to you soon.
Well, a big thank you to John Daly for joining us this afternoon. Really appreciate it. Don't forget to check out his website, johndaly.tv. That's JOHNDALY.tv. And also, we talked about news.tv, which is NOOZ.tv. That's going to wrap it up for yours truly, Bill Alexander. Thank you very much for joining me here on One with Bill Alexander. And stop by the website, One with Bill. Again, that's the number one. Guys, you have a great one. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.